Good afternoon. Welcome to today's Safe Routes to School National Partnership webinar, Youth Engagement, How Kids Can Impact Community Policy, Programs, and Planning. My name is Kate Menning, Field Services Manager with the Safe Routes to School National Partnership in Ohio, and I will be today's moderator. The National Partnership is a nonprofit organization that improves the quality of life for kids and communities by promoting active, healthy lifestyles and safe infrastructure that supports biking and walking. Equity is always at the forefront of our work. But before we get started, we're going to point out a few housekeeping items in GoToWebinar. On the left of your screen should be the GoToWebinar viewer, through which you can see the presentation. To the right is the GoToWebinar control panel where you can raise your hand, ask questions, and select your audio mode. This control panel will collapse automatically when not in use by you. To keep this open, attendees can click the View menu and uncheck Auto Hide Control Panel. You have two options to us today: telephone and mic and speakers. If you have sound problems with one selection, please try the other option. We will do our best to field any issues that come upon you. Just send us a message in the chat box. And even though you are muted, we would love to hear your input. Please use the questions box to ask speaker questions for the Q&A portion of this webinar at any time during the webinar. We will try to answer these questions if there is time at the end in the order that they have been received. Finally, I'm sure that we're all going to be learning a lot today, and we may want to share this information with other folks. If that's the case, then you can do this for free by going to the Safe Routes to School National Partnership website, clicking on the resources header, and selecting the webinar that you'd like to listen to in the left-hand menu. So, on with our webinar today. We have all heard stories about how kids can use their voices to create change in their community. A story that resonates with me started with an editorial that ran in the Columbus Dispatch in April of 2015, written by a student named Mary Ellen. She's a 12-year-old at Wilson Hill Elementary School in Worthington, Ohio. She saw a need for sidewalks to protect kids like her. Quote, "There are kids who live near me and have to walk in the street just as I do, and they are only in the first grade and kindergarten. I am in the 6th grade, and when I walk to school, I almost get hit by a car or bus," end quote. So as a result of this editorial, it caught the attention of the City of Worthington's Parks and Recreations Director, and he and I went out and did a walk audit with Mary Ellen and her family. We documented the need for sidewalks in her neighborhood, and this attention resulted in the city actually convening an advisory committee to address biking and walking in their community. I recently presented at a meeting of this committee where school, government, and community members requested information about safe routes to school and the Ohio resources available to help them make walking and biking safer for their students. All of this from a 12-year-old's concern for others and her speaking up. Today's webinar will highlight programs from across the nation that provide an outlet for youth to affect community change. We hope these programs will inspire your community to encourage and provide outlets for your youth and use their voices, talents, and vision for the betterment of their communities. And now on to our speakers. We have a great group of folks that will be talking about their programs today. The first is Tristan Hall, Director of Youth-Led Programs at the Ohio Drug-Free Action Alliance, and he will be presenting on the Ohio Youth-Led Prevention Network. He's worked in the prevention field since 2008, most recently serving the role of Prevention Coordinator for Columbus Public Health's Alcohol and Drug Abuse Prevention Program. He also spent several years with the Youth to Youth International as a prevention specialist and health educator. Outside of work, Tristan is an active community volunteer and youth mentor. Next up is Emma Pachuta. She is the Neighborhood Program Director for the St. Paul Smart Tips program and will present on the power of young people in bike work education, or biking and walking education. She joined the organization in August of 2011 to develop and manage the Smart Trips Neighborhoods program, which aims to engage target neighborhoods to walk and bike more in their community. Under her management, the Neighborhoods program has substantially changed their model to incorporate youth leadership into their engagement and targeting 2 socioeconomically diverse communities since 2012. Kristen Hockham and Tina Panza will present on engaging middle school youth in leading Safe Routes to School programs. Kristen is the Health Program Specialist for the Active Transportation Safety Program at California Department of Public Health. She's worked for CDPH in the areas of injury prevention, Safe Routes to School, and active transportation for more than 6 years. Tina is the Director of Education for the Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition. She's directed the Sonoma County Safe Routes to School since its inception in 2008 and has been involved in the implementation of comprehensive Safe Routes to School programs in over 50 schools countywide, as well as managing adult and teen bicycle education programs in the community at large. Tina and her colleague Danielle McElwee ran the pilot middle school youth engagement project at Santa Rosa Charter School for the Arts. And now we're going to hear from Tristan.
All right, thank you, Kate. Let's see. Okay. Well, I do want to take a moment and thank Kate and Molly and the folks from the Safe Routes to School National Partnership for allowing me to be a part of your webinar today. I'm very excited to share some of the work we've been doing in Ohio around youth-led and youth engagement and getting youth involved in the process of decision making. And any questions you all have, I'll be happy to stick around for the entire webinar to answer at the end if there are any. So my name is Tristan Hall. I am with the Ohio Youth-Led Prevention Network, which is a program of Drug-Free Action Alliance based in Columbus, Ohio, but we are a statewide agency. In 2011, our state funders, the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, came together and really decided that it was time for Ohio to take youth-led work to the next step. For years, we have had a rich history of youth-led programming, groups that came together to address alcohol, tobacco, bullying, domestic violence, different types of youth issues, but there was never one centralized voice for that process. And so the Ohio Youth-Led Prevention Network came together for 2 reasons. One, to form a statewide adult advisory type of board, which is our Ohio Adult Allies Initiative. And that's a group that comes together and has some very specific training and development, and it serves in an advisory capacity to us, but also to form a youth council. And the goal of the youth council is to have 25 youth from across the state, each that represent their own youth-led program that they're a part of, come together and learn things such as communication strategies, engagement strategies, different prevention topics, and really go back in and infuse those things into their local groups and their local community. So we took our rich history in Ohio and really used that as a base or platform for moving forward in the youth-led work that we do. The overarching goal of youth-led programming in Ohio, and YLP is youth-led programming, is that young people will engage in the SPIF, and the SPIF is the Strategic Prevention Framework. It's a planning tool. If you're familiar with the SPIF, you know that it's a 6-step training module, or planning module. And we wanted young folks in Ohio to be able to engage in planning for their prevention program. So young people will engage in the SPIF to create and implement a strategic plan that uses evidence-based strategies to create community-level change. So while this sounds like a big fancy definition, basically we wanted young people to be able to come together in their communities, assess a problem, create a plan to address the problem, and then actually implement that plan, and then at the end evaluate that plan. So we wanted to figure out how do we do that. The first thing we decided is that You know, in order to be, those are just words on paper. We actually have to have passion and heart for this. We actually have to have folks engaged in the process who are dedicated to the youth and dedicated to their causes. And then we thought about, okay, what are the actual tools we need so that young people can identify the problem, assess the problem, create a plan, implement that plan, and evaluate that plan? What are the things what are the strategies, the activities? And we decided that youth-led programs are all of these things. So leadership retreats, alternative activities. What that means is in drug prevention, we typically say, you know, we don't say drugs are bad. We show the positive side of not using drugs. So what are those alternative activities you can do instead of engaging in the negative behaviors? Community service. It says WATM rally. That's the big We Are the Majority rally that we have in Ohio. Prom and graduation programming, so prom promise, those type of things. College visits. All of these are just some of the things that young people are engaged in these various programs, and they could be in your programs as well. So we need to utilize what's already there and implement that strategic planning process. So there are some benefits to youth. I know the audience today doesn't necessarily do prevention, but we all do some type of youth engagement. And so really this is benefits to having youth engaged in your programs, and it's that they become part of a stable peer network, they have strong interpersonal skills, health and educational outcomes are influenced by characteristics of peers, right? So it puts them in an environment with like-minded people who are making positive decisions. Research shows it's an effective way of sharing knowledge, good way of communicating ideas, and youth-led work allows their peers to be seen as leaders and role models. I'll skip that. There's some benefits of youth-led programming for the community, and one of them, and I think it's applicable to say throughout the school, is that healthy messages are promoted to youth through their peers, right? We know as adults, youth will hear what we're saying, but as youth peer-to-peer, youth will engage in what each other are saying. Positive contributions to the community, and then misperceptions of the norm are corrected. So, you know, the big societal view of youth is that they're detrimental and they're getting in trouble and they're using drugs and, you know, these type of things. So when youth participate in your programs, that view of them is actually changed because the community can see them participating in a positive activity. There are benefits for your program. So again, we wanted to make sure that the youth were involved. And we already knew these benefits, but we wanted to make sure that, you know, folks could see that the organizational effectiveness is increased. Youth know how to reach each other. Again, it's much easier for one of my youth or my youth council to promote an event we're having than it is for me. It's much cooler for them to put it on their Facebook page or for them to talk about it with their peers or classmates. Program activities are more appealing to youth. Again, that same thing. If youth are promoting, if youth are engaged, it's much easier to do that. And then the power of youth voice is harnessed. So, you know, it's easy to say, hey, the youth want this or the youth would like this. But having youth-led programs actually lets you show what the youth would want to do from their own voice. Again, there's benefits for the youth themselves as well. All of these skills they can develop, leadership, planning, social competence. Youth can start to feel empowered. There are positive peer and adult interactions. There's research that shows that having one non-parental adult in your life can greatly influence your likelihood to be successful, and we think that's a big part of it. And then youth can become part of a stable peer network. So all this is the basics that can happen in any youth-led programming. It doesn't have to be prevention. It can be any program where youth are able to make decisions, identify problems, and help implement solutions to address those issues. All of these things are benefits of those programs. So we came together and we said, okay, let's put our heads together and let's form this network. And then we realized, hey, you know, there's probably some steps you should take, right? It's not just a let's talk about it, but let's actually think about the steps that you need to take. We found that youth-led groups were very activity-based, and they didn't really have a theoretical framework or foundation or a common language. So all of these groups that we had in Ohio wanted to do great work, but there was no common language there. So we wanted to provide that. We also found that youth-led programs couldn't provide a solid description of their programs. They could say, hey, you know, we're a drug prevention program, we're a leadership program, but when you talked about the actual outcomes of the program, it was hard for those groups to talk about. People always thought youth-led programs were just pizza parties and giving out T-shirts, And so based on that perception, there was a public loss of value. The public really didn't value youth-led programs. Adult parents just sent their kids, but didn't really know what it was for. So based on the science of youth development, we knew that there was a big impact that youth-led programs could have. We just needed to figure out how to prove that. So with that, we started a few things in Ohio. We started to work on the youth empowerment conceptual framework, and we now see youth-led programming in Ohio as a way to positively impact the social, emotional behavior, and health needs of all young people and prepare them for adulthood. And again, the thing we need to realize is we don't need to just reach out to the young people who are already the high achievers. They're the easiest to reach, but we need to be inclusive of all youth. So it's really about trusting the process and holding the vision. We wanted to have a unified voice for youth-led in Ohio, and it took quite a long time. It was very challenging. Cameron Pittman, the co-founder and president of the Forum for Youth Investment, said it best. It's not about coming together. It's about having an impact, and that's been our guiding statement through this process in Ohio. How do we have an impact, and how are we measuring that impact? So we wanted to do that, and here's how we did that. One is really defining that adult role. So what can you do as a leader of a youth-led program to, one, make sure that it's youth-led, make sure that the youth are engaged, and make sure that the youth feel empowered to actually implement whatever solution it is that they're trying to implement. So it's probably, some cases today implementing sidewalks or doing, walk paths or those type of things. Adult allies serve as guides and play an important role along the process with youth. So what is the adult role? And this is really applicable to any youth-led program. Be a partner. Be an ally. Foster equal involvement. So again, encouraging the youth to take a leadership role in whatever it is that you're working on. Be a guide. You're there for the safety, the liability, the fiscal, and then be that content expert. What I mean by that is, so I'll give an example. Here at the Ohio Youth-Led Prevention Network, the youth decided they wanted to do an advocacy day because they felt that state legislators were not aware of all the things that were happening in their communities with youth and drugs. So my role in that was helping to set up the appointments with the youth, helping to kind of get some guided conversations, and then getting them there to the State House. Once they got there, they met with the legislators. They led the conversations, and they actually went and did some follow-up work. So it was a good partnership. And then the content expertise came in where I was able to work with the youth and kind of give them some background on each legislator, the things they have voted for, the things that they have supported and advocated for, and the youth were able to bring those things up in their conversations with the legislators. Run interference with adult systems. That's it. Your youth want to do a big event at the school. Somebody has to book that. Somebody has to do the contracting, those type of things. And then documentation, of course. I want to speed up here to make sure we get through everything. Also know that youth-led is not just adults getting out of the way. It really is going to be that partnership. The next slide I love because a lot of adults think that youth-led is that adults are just stepping back and letting youth take over the show, and that, however, is not the case. It is youth stepping forward, but adults knowing when to step back in and when to step forward. It's creating that good balancing act. Youth-led is not adults just telling youth not to do drugs, or in your case, telling them to walk on the sidewalks or not to be in the streets, just recruiting youth to do an activity. Youth-led is not having those token youth on boards and committees. Other places I've worked, they've said, oh, let's have a youth on the board. And I've always questioned, what is the purpose? If there's not a purpose, if their youth voice is not going to be heard, then it's truly not a youth-led initiative. Smoke and mirrors for the public's image. Youth doing all of the grunt work is not youth-led. And then the absence of adult involvement. That adult involvement is still very key. And then youth just doing what they want to do is not youth-led as well. Adults must be providing programs for and to youth. For and to is key. Not just for, but also to. Not just to, also for. So, youth-led, again, for them, to them, and with them. So for them is adults are in control and youth simply participate. So you plan an activity, you plan a summit, you do something, and youth just come. To them is where you're sharing your wisdom and experience, and youth are just receiving what you have to offer. With them is where we need to live, and that's where adults and youth are learning from one another. Adults are sharing their wisdom and experience, and youth are embraced as resources and partners. So again, we want to make sure that youth-led work is with them, not for them or to them, and that category would be youth-led. Now, there's nothing wrong with adult-led work, but we know the way to maximize youth engagement is to have it truly be youth-led. So 3 conditions: adults are willing to share their power and responsibility, young people are willing to take on the responsibility, and both need skills to successfully work together, which is why for the adults we came up with this framework in Ohio, which I'd be happy to share with anybody. And we've developed a comprehensive training for adults on how to work with youth and be partners. Basically, we need to be working in Style 3. Style 1 is people view youth as objects, people view youth as recipients, and people view youth as resources. When they're viewed as objects and recipients, that's still adult-led programming. It's youth-based programming, but it's adult-led. When the youth are viewed as resources, that's when it's going to be considered youth-led programming. I am running out of time here, but if anybody would like any more information on what we're doing in Ohio, how we're doing it, any of those things, here's my contact information, and I'd be happy to share any of the references we have. Again, we've been doing some great work with adults on how to make one framework for selling your programs in Ohio, improving your outcomes. So I'd be happy to talk about that. And again, thank you to Kate and Molly for organizing this, and I'll stick around.
Okay, thank you, Tristan. Our next speaker is Emma Patuta. She's the program director from Smart Trips Neighborhoods, and I believe we can see Emma's screen now.
Okay, can you also hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thanks. As Tristan also said, thanks so much for inviting me here today. I'm really excited to share with you about our Neighborhoods program model at St. Paul Smart Trips and how we've tried to incorporate youth leadership into the heart of our program. So St. Paul Smart Trips is one of 4 TMOs, or Transportation Management Organizations, in Minnesota. I should probably mention that we are not affiliated with a Safe Routes to School program because St. Paul does not have a Safe Routes to School program. However, we do partner with the City of St. Paul in all of our programs in one way, shape, or form. The mission at our organization is to improve access and mobility for those who travel in and around St. Paul. And we do that through currently 4 different programs. We have a Women on Bikes program that works on bike education and advocacy. We have a St. Paul Walks initiative that works on pedestrian safety. We have a Workplaces program that works with getting employees to walk, bike, take transit, carpool to work. And then we have our Smart Trips Neighborhoods program. So as Kate mentioned earlier, our Neighborhoods program mission is to work within a targeted neighborhood in St. Paul and get people out of their cars and walking and biking and taking transit more. The history of our program is that it started in 2008, and we closely followed the City of Portland, Oregon Smart Trips program, which used residential social marketing to get people out of their cars and walking and biking and taking transit more. Basically, in the past, participants could opt into our program, and they would receive a calendar of classes, rides, and events, and basically get rewarded for good behavior. We did 3 of these programs in 3 consecutive years in 3 different neighborhoods in St. Paul, and what we found is that we had some really good measurements. It seemed like we were really increasing walking, biking, and transit use in those neighborhoods, but we also noticed that the demographics of people that were opting into our program were predominantly white middle-class residents, and that doesn't necessarily reflect the demographics in St. Paul. So when I came on staff, we really wanted to evolve our program model to one that was more inclusive of the different communities that our city has. Our funder was really interested in working in the Frogtown neighborhood. The Frogtown neighborhood is one of the most socioeconomically diverse communities in St. Paul. It also has some of the highest transit use in our city, but it's coupled with some of our lowest walking and biking rates in the community. It's a really, really rich community. It has a history of different refugees and immigrant populations moving in. 40% of the population is under the age of 18, so it's also a very young community. So when I came on staff in 2011, the first thing we did is we spent about 6 months organizing in the neighborhood. We really wanted to learn from the community. We wanted to understand, were they even interested in us working with them? And we also wanted to understand, if they did want us there, what would a program look like in their community? And we learned that most residents were in fact interested in us coming in to do a program with them. They really wanted to see young people involved in positive things in their community, and they also didn't want us to do a program to them. They really wanted us to do a program with them. So as we were building relationships, our program became the Frogtown Crew, which is 10 to 14 high school aged youth from the Frogtown community. It's a partnership between the Kitty Anderson Youth Science Center at the Science Museum of Minnesota which I would call the YSC because that's a really long name, and the Frogtown Neighborhood Association, which I'll refer to as FNA. So this trifecta partnership brought in expertise from 3 different fields. It brought in the Youth Development Partnership piece through the YSC, it brought in the Community Development Local Partnership piece through FNA, and then Smart Trips brought in that transportation content. So this is what our crew looked like in 2013. And when we brought them on staff, they were housed at the Youth Science Center. We immersed them in a year of basically a self-identity. So we wanted our youth to understand who were they in relationship to the other youth on their crew, who were they in relationship to their community. We really wanted to build a team of youth who held each other accountable. And we also tried to build an understanding behind how does transportation relate to social justice and equity, specifically in the Frogtown neighborhood. So after that year, we kind of brought all the youth together and we held a series of dialogues, and we really asked them, you know, what did you learn? What did you hear when you were in the community? They attended some focus groups and they helped to host a focus group with residents. You know, so what did you hear? What were the barriers and how do you want to engage your community around walking and biking? And the biggest thing that they heard is that people felt really unsafe walking and biking in their neighborhood. And the biggest reason is that they didn't really know their neighbors. There were a lot of barriers to that. There were some language barriers. There were some cultural barriers. There were, you know, people working different work shifts, so they maybe didn't see their neighbor out ever. And so hearing that information, our youth chose to host a series of 9 block parties in the year of 2014. So these block parties were located all over the neighborhood at different intersections that were near our crew members' homes. With the hopes to really have that sort of secondary effect of engaging their own kind of radius, like 1 block radius of where they live. And then the final block party resulted or culminated in a Chalk the Pavement project that one of our youth cabal designed and actually led the community through a process where they could actually design a part of it, and then she would help them spray paint that design into the piece. So we looked at it as a community engagement project, but we also looked at it as an educational tool. We don't have a Paint the Pavement project in Frogtown, so we use it as an opportunity to speak with residents about, you know, if they might want to see one of those in the future in their neighborhood. So after 2014, we kind of took a step back and we reflected on the work that we've done. We really felt that we'd met the goals of youth development, that the YSC was really aiming that was really their goal, to really build a crew of youth leaders in Frogtown. We'd also met our community development goals that FNA had, but we hadn't met that goal that Smart Trips had around behavior change. We weren't really able to measure if we were able to change behaviors in the community. So we decided to do a second year of outreach in 2015. And we brought the youth together again, and we asked them to kind of think a little bit more critically about, okay, what kind of projects would really help to change your community's behaviors or perceptions around walking and biking? So in 2015, they held a series of Unity bike rides in the neighborhood. I believe there were 5 that they summer, and the goals are really to meet community members, learn about bike routes in their neighborhood. Bike access is an issue in Frogtown, so we worked with our local bike share provider, Nice Ride, to provide bicycles. That only half helped solve that gap because you have to be 16 or older to ride a bicycle, and we had a lot of youth that wanted to ride with us, so we weren't totally able to fill that gap. And then their second project was a community mural, and the goal or the reason behind the community mural project was that they really wanted to beautify their neighborhood. They really felt like one of the reasons people weren't walking and biking is because maybe they didn't have anything to see that was beautiful as they were walking. So that was the second project that we did with them. And then we also installed a series of 30 youth-designed bike racks in partnership with Darrow Bike Racks, which is a local provider based in Minneapolis. And again, after the summer, we reflected and we really saw a lot of successes out of this programming. Our youth really stepped up, a lot of really strong youth leadership. And so, and we'd also spent 3 years in this neighborhood. In our past program, we'd only spent 1 year. So, as the Frogtown crew was coming to an end in 2015, because we were running low in funding, we realized that we'd created this new model. And our new model for our neighborhoods program is a 3-tiered approach instead of our sort of 1 tier, which was just outreach and education. Our new program model begins with relationship building, and then we transition into outreach and education. And then we added a 3rd tier, which was advocacy, because we really felt like with all of this outreach and awareness that we were doing in Frogtown, it was kind of the wrong time to take a step back. We felt like the neighborhood, the community, people were poised for sort of a next step for something. And so, looking towards projects that were available to us in 2016, the Frogtown neighborhood was updating their small area plan this upcoming year. It's going to be completed this winter. And our bus provider, Metro Transit, also is looking to do their 20-year vision around equity. And so our bus provider is actually reaching out to different communities in both Minneapolis and St. Paul and trying to understand what the gaps are. Frogtown was one of the neighborhoods that was listed as a target neighborhood. So we were able to solidify some funding to work on some of these projects this year. So what we did was, since the Frogtown crew ended, we ended up putting out an RFP to our youth or a job posting, and we actually offered internships at Smart Trips. And we had 4 of our youth that came from the Frogtown crew were hired on staff, along with a youth worker who works 20 hours a week with us. And this summer, we gave them kind of some, broad guidelines of gathering input around the small area plan and gathering some information around bus routes in their community. And this is kind of a snapshot of what our summers looked like to date. So our youth have led youth-focused events. We're aiming to do 1 youth event every month. Our final one's going to convene in September. And the whole goal is to have discussions around community issues, make sure we're bringing that youth voice to the table for both the small area plan project as well as our Metro Transit vision. And looking forward as our funding comes to a close this summer, and some of our youth positions organically end. One of our youth has already gone to college, for example. As we shift our focus to a different neighborhood, we want to make sure we're providing pathways for some of our youth who are interested in staying on staff to potentially mentor a new group of youth as we adapt and evolve this model as we move into our next neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. That was an impressive slideshow and slide presentation about the Smart Trips neighborhood and your youth engagement program. Our next speakers are Kristen Houcom and Tina Panza. Kristen will be going first, so take it away, Kristen.
Thank you, and good morning or good afternoon, wherever you may be. I am Kristen Houcom, and today I'm going to talk to you about the Safe Routes to School and Student Leaders Facilitator's Guide to Engaging Middle School Youth. A little background on the guide: it was developed by the Safe Routes to School National Partnership and Urban Thinkers in partnership with the Safe Routes to School Technical Assistance Resource Center, which is now called the Active Transportation Resource Center. The guide has 3 objectives. The first is to increase awareness of Safe Routes to School programs among California middle school students, teachers, adult facilitators, and partners. And even though it was designed for California, it can absolutely be used nationwide. The second objective is to provide tools, resources, strategic activities to support student leadership in the implementation of Safe Routes to School programs in middle schools. And finally, the final objective is to engage middle school student leaders in planning and hosting activities that will increase the number of students safely walking and bicycling to school, while contributing to more pedestrian and bicycle-friendly policies within schools and communities. Training and supporting groups of student leaders is an exciting and effective way of engaging schools in safe walking and bicycling promotion. Involving student leaders has been proven to be an effective way to promote healthy transportation. Collaboration with student leaders will ensure that strategies and activities are cool-proofed and fun, as our previous speakers have pointed out. The adult facilitator's role is not to teach the participants, but to help them reach shared goals, such as more students safely walking and bicycling to school, safer school zones, and fewer cars arriving at school. The guide is designed to aid adult facilitators in running a Safe Routes to School student leadership project as a part of an after-school program. However, it can be adapted to a student leadership group, such as ASB, or a classroom project during school hours. The guide leads an adult facilitator through 2 phases of project implementation in 10 sessions. The preparation phase is broken up into 3 sessions and is meant to establish foundation for a Safe Routes to School student leader group. The campaign phase is broken up into 7 sessions to prepare one of 3 campaign options, which include events and activities for a Safe Routes to School program. The preparation phase includes 3 90-minute sessions to prepare a student leader group to begin a Safe Routes to School campaign. The preparation phase is about forming the youth group, getting students to know one another through ice-breaking activities, and beginning to work like a team. After the preparation phase, the student group will choose one of 3 campaigns to pursue. The campaign phase directs student leaders towards action by choosing and implementing one of 3 campaigns. Campaign A, which is called More Walk, More Roll, is about increasing the number of students who safely walk and bicycle to and from school. Campaign B, called Safety First, is about making it safer for students to walk and bicycle to and from school. Campaign C, called For Earth's Sake, is about improving air quality, lowering the school's carbon footprint, and making the school area safer by reducing the number of vehicles arriving at school. Here's a session at a glance, and you'll see it's broken up into various parts. The first, which is the goals section, which would be identifying the goals of this particular session. Next is the materials and preparation, which is what is needed from the adult facilitator for this particular session. And finally, the exercise section, or the activities, which will be conducted during the session. You can find the Facilitator's Guide at the Active Transportation Resource Center website under Resources. You'll also find a ton of other information and resources that our program has developed over the years. We'll save questions for the end, but I'd be remiss if I didn't show you a picture of my 3 little active transportation users. Here's my contact information, but now it is my pleasure to turn you over to Tina Panza with the Sonoma County Safe Routes to School program. Tina and her colleague Danielle piloted the Facilitator's Guide at the Santa Rosa Charter School for the Arts in Northern California. Tina and Danielle utilized the Facilitator's Guide to run a Teens Go Green Club for 3 months in the spring of 2014.
Hi, thank you, Kristen, and thank you everyone for having me. I'm so excited to be here. You can advance the slide next. Next, thank you. Just a little bit of background on the Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition and our involvement with working with youth. We had actually, before we agreed to pilot the middle school youth engagement guide, we had already been running Teens Go Green Clubs at local middle schools for several years. We've done a lot of fun things with those kids, like bike rides and having them run the bike blender at event and working with them to support and promote their school's monthly walk roll days. But our previous clubs had run at lunch, and we had a very informal structure. So we were excited to pilot the more structured format of the youth engagement guide, and also to try an after-school club. And we decided to implement the club at a nearby K-8 school, the Santa Rosa Charter School for the Arts, as she mentioned, where Danielle, my colleague, who happened, and also my coworker, happened to be a parent, so that gave us an in there. Yeah, it was just, we figured that it would really help with recruitment and just getting the teachers involved to be involved with that school. So next. The first thing really to consider when doing a club is how you're going to get the students involved. We started in the middle of the year, and recruitment's always a challenge. The school we were recruiting as a pretty small school, just one class per grade, so we were only looking at about 100 students to pull from. But even if you have a very large school, you probably should be going through this as much recruitment as possible. Give yourself time to do that. We created a flyer that is in the middle there to advertise the club, and also on the back of the flyer was an enrollment form. And we utilized every channel that we possibly could have. We really worked with the teachers to promote the club with their students and identify students that might be interested in joining. Also the after school club. We sent home flyers with parents. We went into classrooms and talked to the kids ourselves over probably the period of about 2 weeks before the club actually started. And we ended up with about 10 students who joined, and we thought that was a really good number considering the number of students we were pulling from. They were all sixth graders. We were hoping to get sixth, seventh, and eighth graders, but the sixth graders were the most enthusiastic of the 3 grade levels at that point. And only a few students were active walkers and bikers. The rest were more environmentally concerned. So next. One thing that the guide really does well is it gives you a lot of options for building rapport among the kids and yourself. They have a bunch of team building activities, which really helped actually. We did the activities at the beginning of every class, and there was that period of prep time where you did a lot of that, and they were really essential to getting the kids not only into the right mind frame, but they were also mostly physical and helped the kids to work off some of the energy before we got started. They were really fun. They got us to laugh. And we also did often team building activities in the middle of the 90-minute class. It was a really great way to refocus the group and liven things up. Next. And part of the period with engaging youth is getting them to choose which activity that one of the 3 activities which Kristen was mentioning. So we did that with our kids, and they chose to take on the first option, which was the more walk and roll. And then they got into the campaign, and the campaigning was one of the most fun parts, prepping for the event that they planned. And as kind of was said with some of the other presentations, it really was a process of, utilizing the kids and their energy and their ideas, but also them in and, bringing in your own expertise at the same time. This is just an example of, a brainstorm that we did with the kids and planning that we did. And so what worked best for us was to, kind of designate categories and just let the kids share all their ideas, write them down, then have them decide which ideas to stay and which ones to cut. And we'd often have to guide them a bit and ask them to think about outcomes as well as how great the idea really was, because they come up with some really crazy ideas. But in the end, all the ideas were the students' ideas, and we helped take their ideas into reality. Next. When it came to the event, the kids did, with our guidance, they did all the work on the event. They were really fun and they were full of energy, and they had some real talent. This was actually an art school. That flyer in the middle was designed by one of the students, and they made posters and, getting them to really buy into the event and be student leaders and get the other kids excited by seeing that, it was really a student-led event. Next. So what they ended up doing was they planned a walk roll day. It was in May of 2013, and we were just really proud of how the kids pulled off the event. They were incredibly responsible, and I think part of that was really just that relationship that we built over that time and the team building that they did, so they felt like they were part of a cohesive unit. And they worked really hard as they could to make the event a success. One of the best ideas the kids came up with was when they wanted to do a raffle and they wanted to get kids to, participate in that, but they didn't want to have a lot of bottleneck at the walk roll table. So they came up with an idea to have the kids, when they got to the walk roll table, they had a big piece of butcher paper on the table, and they just had kids sign in on the butcher paper. And then they hung the butcher paper up on the wall so everyone could see who could participate. And then they just blindfolded themselves and then kind of ran up to the butcher paper wall and put their fingers on a name, and that's how they picked the raffle winners. And it was just an idea I would have never come up with myself. And they just loved coming up with their own ideas. Next. They also came up with an idea for a bike decorating contest and a shoe decorating contest. So they really did enliven the event more than, I mean, I've done walk and roll events at schools all over the county, mostly parent-led, and the student-led event just had more energy and spirit and new ideas to it that were just awesome. Next. It happened to be the event that they planned was a record-breaking walk and roll to school day for that school. They had done a couple walk and roll days in the past that were parent-led. The bike cage was so full of bikes that people had to lock up bikes outside the cage, and the principal agreed to lock bikes to the fence so bikes were safe. And the kids in our club, which we actually, I forgot to mention, we called it the Teens Go Green Club. They were so excited about the club that they asked us many times for the next 2 years if we could have the club again. And we actually did, work with them again on a couple of events, and the school is still involved with Safe Routes to School and encouraging walking and rolling on a monthly basis as a result of launching this project. So thank you so much. And if you guys have any questions at the end, I'll stick around.
Thank you. Thank you guys very much. We have now reached the end of our presentations, and we're going to go ahead and get started with questions and answers. And we do have a few questions that are in our questions box right now. I'm going to start with one that is probably geared towards either Emma or Kristen. How important is it to conduct research, engage the community, and focus groups before starting a program? And maybe this could be for anyone. Does any of our speakers have some bullet point ideas that they can share?
Do they mean specifically with a youth program, or just any type of program, I wonder?
Probably with the youth programs in particular, how important is it to probably get that before, the pre-implementation information on engaging your community and doing your research before starting a program?
Well, this is Emma. Hi. I can quickly speak to sort of what we've done at Smart Trips. Generally, the model for all of our neighborhoods program has been to host a series of focus groups, and we've kind of chosen the types of demographics we've looked to focus on. So in one of our past programs, we wanted to focus on women with small children, for example, and so we hosted a focus group with that. I would say with the work specifically in Frogtown, we also hosted a series of focus groups, and I think it is really important to hear what the community is saying and sort of hear what they want. Just overall, I think it's generally good. I don't think it has to be focus groups. I think we got creative with our youth and how we've been getting feedback. But I think it's always good to understand that each neighborhood and community has their own barriers and sort of unique barriers to some of the issues that you're trying to tackle.
Okay. Well, kind of piggybacking on that question, there were a couple of them that came in about recruitment. How do you recruit your Frogtown Crew youth members, for example, or how do you find high school age youth who want to be involved? How have you been getting the word out, both Emma and probably Tina at that middle school level too?
Well, with the Frogtown Crew specifically, our youth crew manager was a spoken word artist from the neighborhood named Tusaik Lee, and so he was really tasked with doing the recruitment. And I would say when working with high school youth, we found it's really important to sort of make the work seem cool so that it doesn't feel like a chore. And luckily I was not tasked to do that because I don't feel like I'm very cool. But Tusaik was really cool and was able to really engage youth and make the work sound exciting. And I think the fact that we were able to have a few years working with youth gave us opportunity to retain some of the youth that were more engaged, and they were able to recruit their friends when there was a position open. So I would say our retainment got stronger and better the longer we were in the community.
Yeah, and I'm going to, piggyback on that. I think the cool factor isn't important, but I just think, I can't underemphasize the amount of networking and time you need to put into recruitment. You can't just assume that a flyer is going to bring kids to the table. Like, go to the classroom, go to the lunchtime and set up a table, talk to the kids, talk to the teachers, have the teachers identify kids. At least at the middle school level, you really need a lot of involvement. Sometimes the parents will bring the kids into it at that level. The basic thing is you just can't expect kids to show up based on a flyer or one announcement in the classroom. It takes more work.
Okay. Thank you. I have a question for Tristan.
Okay.
Let me find it. Tristan, can you please share the key steps in initiating a youth advisory group? And I had written down a question of that nature too. What is the process that you guys, or is there something that can be shared about the process that you guys have?
Okay. Well, here in Ohio, we've done two things. We've done it a little differently for our statewide advisory group in the way that we recruited, and the fact that we only, for the first few years, were recruiting youth who were a part of a local program. So the way our program is set up is that it's the statewide group, and so we specifically targeted the adults that we worked with and who we had relationships with, who were the adult leaders of the program, to ask them to, kind of give us some youth. But specifically in setting up the council, we really had to define what the purpose was. Is it just getting kids together for fun, or what it was? So once we were able to sit down and define, hey, we want to empower these youth so they can have strategies, so they can have ways to make changes for mental health and drug abuse prevention, we were able to go from there. We also have found a lot of success. At the beginning of every year, we're actually about to do it here in 2 weeks. We hold a weekend retreat with our youth council, and we do a big strategic planning process. And it's actually fun for the youth. Sometimes it's cumbersome for us adults. We think about that adult voice and think about what we want to do, but we do a big planning process where we have sticky notes all on the walls. We bucket things into categories and then break them down from there and find 2 or 3 things that we want to focus on for the year. And then from that, we don't personally use like the model where there's like a group president or anything like that. I've always felt like, that model is not appropriate for youth-led, in the fact that we want all youth to have an equal voice. But we do put youth on work committees, actually. So we take those 3 things that we decided to focus on. So we have a big We Are the Majority rally, and then we do a big advocacy day, and then we decide, hey, we want to do a mental health awareness campaign. And we, every meeting, those committees actually meet, and then they're accountable to one another, they report out to one another, and then they report to the big group as well. So we found a lot of success in youth being accountable to one another, and it seems to be a strategy that's working for us.
Thank you, Tristan. I see a couple of questions that can be kind of combined that relate to the age appropriate nature of some of these programs. For example, Kristen, could the guide for middle schools be adapted for younger or older youth? And on top of that, there was another question about their Safe Routes to School program being targeted to 4th and 5th graders, and that these programs that we've been talking about are for older students. Is that too young to use that material or any other material that's out there?
That's a wonderful question. I think that a 4th and 5th grade would absolutely be appropriate for. There might be some context tweaking, but I think that it would be a wonderful opportunity for the older elementary school kids.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that some of the adult would need to take a bigger role in the planning and the coordination of a project like a walk and roll day than with the 4th and 5th graders. But definitely that would work out. I think that the elements of the guide probably wouldn't be super, with high school students, would be a little bit young for them, the activities in there.
Okay, and I imagine that there are other materials out there that are geared more towards elementary school or older elementary school programs that would be available through searches. Maybe the National Center for Safe Routes to School, for example, may have some activities.
The Active Transportation Resource Center actually does have a 4th and 5th grade curriculum series that's for teachers, and it's available on our website. We did that in partnership with our California Department of Education Healthy Kids Resource Center. So those are based classroom-based lesson plans that teachers can use. I think they could be used outside the classroom, but they really are meant to tackle the core content, the Common Core standards in that classroom setting. But it's all about teaching kids how to walk and bike safely, the importance of walking and biking for your health and for the environment, and that is available at our it's casaferoutestoschool.org.
Great. We had a couple questions about evaluation and like how important is it? Oh wait, I think I said that one already. Sorry, guys. We have. I'm interested in more about the program evaluation, what tools are used to assess behavior changes, attaining of goals. Do you involve youth in that evaluation process? So I think anyone could answer that question. Maybe Tina, did you have any evaluation methods used?
We had, our evaluation consisted of just like doing pre and post counts for the participation on walk and roll, and we also had students kind of evaluate their experience with the program, you know, how they felt, what the impact was on them, and whether they felt like they would be inspired to change their behavior. So that's what we did. So we kind of just wanted to see if we had an impact on the school and an impact on the students individually. And we felt like we did. I mean, both counts, but it wasn't like a deep evaluation.
Okay.
This is Emma. So I can, in our past neighborhoods program model that I kind of originally talked about, we actually did a really rigorous evaluation. We had a pre and a post survey for the entire neighborhood, and we would actually have a control neighborhood, and we spent quite a bit of money on it. I think we spent upwards to about $30,000 on our evaluation in our first few programs, and we actually had some really, really strong measurements from that. With the Frogtown crew, the first year of outreach, we actually stuck with that model. We did a pre and a post survey, and we actually brought our youth into that. Our youth door knocked and administered the surveys, and what we found was that we had a really strong group for our pre-survey, but in the Frogtown neighborhood, we had a lot of barriers to getting that post-survey. People weren't able to get contacted because they'd potentially moved, or their phone numbers changed, or they weren't interested in responding a second time around. And so what we found is that for the work that we're currently doing, we took a more qualitative approach to this version of our program instead of quantitative, and we've found funders that have been very open to that as well.
Okay. Well,
this is
thank you. Yo, go ahead, Tristan.
No, I was just going to quickly add, I know I'm in a different focus area than you all, but we found a lot of success in school surveys. As old school and outdated as that sounds, actually, there's a national survey that's more behavioral health related called the YRBS. It's the Youth Risk Behavioral Surveillance Survey. Mm-hmm. So a lot of health related questions there, but we found a lot of data from maybe looking at 2012, implementing programs, and then looking at 2013 versus 14. So we've used that a lot in our program.
Thank you. I know that we are 1 minute to the end of time. We did not get to everybody's questions. We will do our best to try to address these later. Vali probably will know more about that system than I do. But I want to thank all of our speakers for being here. This was a really great presentation and dialogue, in my opinion. I want to remind you all that this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our website here at the on the Safe Routes to School National Partnership website under resources. We will also be sending you a very quick survey about this particular webinar, and we would love to hear your feedback about content and the usefulness of this particular webinar. And we would like to thank you for being here and hanging out with us. And thanks again to all of our speakers. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.